Welcome, everyone. This is episode 8 of Walk the Talk with Marelise and Isla, and we're so happy that you're back here with us today. We've been talking about myths in the last couple of weeks, and as Marelise and I were coming up with our thought for the topic for today, we were thinking about the moments in our own lives where maybe a myth was debunked because we had an experience of it, or something happened in that moment in time that really changed our perception of what parenting is and should be, and how we can be better parents. So we want to use this topic today, and here's the statement, so to speak. What is one realization that changed my parenting journey forever? And I will say that I can look back on this moment in time and know that it was the time that really made the change. I don't think at the time I had that awareness. I think that we're all doing the best we can all the time. Most of us live in a world where we're overwhelmed by our responsibilities and our duties, and we're trying to make everything work for everybody. But sometimes we can look back and we can go, oh, there's a line in the sand there somewhere. And for me, that line in the sand was when my youngest was about 14 years old. So we're going to chat a little bit about this kind of one moment in time and what changed about our parenting, and hope that in sharing our own story, that'll help you be able to look in your life at your stories and kind of go, oh, was there a moment in time? Or is there something I could now look back on and think, maybe I can change my perception or my way of parenting because I can look at what happened there. And I can say, that was really, really important. What did I learn from that? So I'm going to throw this to Marelise, and maybe have Marelise start with her moment in time, her experience that changed things.
Thank you, Isla. Yes, there are in fact so many, but let's just stick to one so that we don't spend too much time on this. So what actually happened for me, because I walked into an instant family with 3 children that were very different and actually in many ways represented myself, my brother, and my sister growing up, just in terms of our differences, different passions, interests, etc. And I was checking homework of the youngest child, as my mother always did with me. And because of the nature of the situation, and I was completely not prepared for everything that I walked into. What do you do when you're totally overwhelmed? You revert back to what you know. You revert back to whatever you experienced before, even whether you liked it or not. It's just, it's programmed, right? So, and I was checking her homework and she didn't do it the way that I wanted to. And I really raised my voice. I got so irritated because it was just another thing to do in the day, which of course we know there's so much to do at any given time. And the way that I got upset with her, I could just see this child's spirit break. I could see she was really trying her best, and I just caused her to melt down completely. And in that moment, when I noticed that, what I saw on her face, I could identify with so well, because it was the one thing that I actually remember from my childhood that really killed me, is how upset my mom got, even though I tried my best. And that really was a life-changing moment for me, because I realized I am doing exactly what I hated and never wanted to experience myself again. And what that really opened me up to was, every child is different. If you're going to approach your parenting with a hard and fast set of rules and expectations and preconceived ideas, you're going to miss the mark. Inevitably, you're going to miss the mark, because you cannot approach 2 children in the same way. You just can't. You've got to take every situation, every child in front of you and say, okay, who is this child? What makes them different? What do they respond to? What do they need from me? That was really a life-changing moment for me. Something that I thought I would never do myself. And of course, that's exactly what I ended up doing, because that's how I learned.
Yeah, yeah. And Marelise, it's so normal that we take the way we were parented and we use that as our
Frame of reference. That's
yeah, because we don't have anything else. Until we have something else, we don't have anything else. And in your case, as for any step parent walking into an existing family without any experience other than your own experience of being parented, it's got to be a whole other level of difficulty than when, as in my case, I had my two boys, but I raised them from babies. And I still, of course, had all those epiphanies of, oh my gosh, two kids in completely different souls and spirits. And how am I going to adjust to be able to be the right parent for each of these children? So thank you for sharing the story. And I hope that other parents can see inside your story, the fact that there's so many moments that you can have that kind of awareness. And then what do we do with that awareness? So my particular story comes from when my younger son was about 14 years old. And I had spent the middle school years being very, very worried about him. A very sensitive child. And he was being bullied at school. I was aware of that. We were trying to deal with it. And I would go to bed at night really concerned that his mental and emotional well-being was being so damaged. And how was I going to help him with this? And I didn't have support. I didn't know what to do. I was in a world that was very unfamiliar to me at this point. But one day I got a phone call from the mother of one of his friends, and he had been doing homework at this friend's house that particular afternoon. And she called to say, Carrick was here today and just want to check that everything's okay. He just seemed sad, depressed. I'm just checking, is there anything going on that I need to know about that would be helpful? That phone call just stopped my heartbeat, because this particular mom was the head of nursing in the emergency room of our local hospital. So she was the authority for me. She'd seen everything. And if she was making this phone call to say she was worried about my son, then I really, really was getting the validation that I needed to be worried too. So I could no longer be somehow believing this myth. We go back to myths that these kinds of behaviors were normal, that he would pull out of it, that all of that. I now had somebody of authority saying to me, I'm concerned about your child. Basically, Isla, wake up, you need to be concerned too. I can now look back and say that moment in time was when I made the shift in my own parenting. I understood that my role was now to walk alongside that child. That how was I going to help him be the best, most successful version of himself? It wasn't about what I thought was right and best. I needed to now absorb and observe what was right for him and support that so that he and I became a team. And as you well know, in these conversations, I talk a lot about in the teenage years, walking alongside your child, figuring out how to be a team with him, getting to the next steps. And that moment in time was the one that taught me it all. And I'm forever grateful, because I truly, truly believe that, especially today for our children, we need to be so much more observant of what is going on for them, and put aside what we believe is that kind of that old style of parenting, or that style of you'll be successful if you do this, this, and this. We have no idea what it's going to take to be successful.
Yeah, it doesn't look a certain way, one particular way. That's the whole point.
Exactly.
Whereas that is kind of the understanding that we had before. And this is why the shift is so essential, because when you realize with every child that you have, you need to grow with them. You're not just going to stand in front of them and say, come this way, this way, this. Every day is an opportunity to grow with them. And the better you're able to do that, the more you open yourself up to do that, the greater the experience is going to be, and the more you are going to be able to understand and support them based on who they are. But we underestimate the amount of growth we need to go through alongside them. It's both of us are growing continuously. That's how these wonderful, essential relationships form best. It's exactly like you're saying. You had to decide not what worked for the previous one, and therefore you will do it that way. What are you going to do? How are you going to change for your second child? What is going to help him get through it all?
Yeah.
And this is what I find so amazing about our experiences, Isla, because even if your memory looks a little bit different to mine, the fundamental principles are exactly the same. And this is why we know this applies to all parents.
Everyone.
And these are things that people didn't talk about before.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think because I am now so focused on those teenage years, I think that for parents, there's a timeline to all of this, right? 18 is going to happen. And that magic number is when, in spite of the fact that the brain isn't fully developed until they're 25, that child becomes an adult. And
Yes.
what we want to be absolutely sure of is our relationship is so solid that we can help them not just get to 18, but get to 19 and 20 and 21 and 22 successfully, because they will need us all the way through, but they need us in a different role. And we are learning through the teenage years how to develop that role for ourselves. And we've just got to be constantly adjusting and observing and figuring it out as we go, because they need us. They will always need us, but they need us through those early 20 years. It's very, very important that we build those relationships for the future as well.
And the sooner you start, the better, because for me, it really helped me that I discovered this, because after that happened, after that massive epiphany, a year after that, my son was born. And I just, based on that moment where I watched, I could see everything crumble before my eyes, exactly the way that I never wanted it to happen. I was so much more mindful of how my son grew up. And because I was able to take that time and put all other ideas aside and say, okay, who is this little guy? Let's help him discover more of himself. When he got to his teens, I could say it was easier to say, because there was a solid frame of reference, or also to say, what are you doing? This is not who you are. Or, I understand why you're getting so upset, because that is who you are. You care about these kinds of things that other people don't even look at. So I think just being able from day one, and of course, there's not, once you realize who this wonderful little child is, it's a daily process. It's exactly like you say. And what you're going to learn in the earlier years are going to look different to when they get to their teens. And that's a whole new learning curve, as you often talk about. And I think just not getting overwhelmed by the incredible responsibility this is, and that it's so hard for most people, but to say, what are we going to discover together today? If you can just unlock that little thought and say, okay, yes, it's hard work, yes, it's all these things, yes, I'm so exhausted, yes, I'm all these things, but what are we going to discover together today?
Yeah,
I think
I love that.
might be something that will help all of us get through it a little bit easier.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, curiosity, right?
Oh, yes.
Stay curious about everything, about your child, about yourself, about if we're not growing, we're dying. So there is that natural push, that kind of biological demand to keep moving forward and keep growing. So being aware of it and being mindful and intentional
Yes.
about it along with our kids is what's going to help us help them and stay close during those adult years as well, which is so important. So any final thoughts? I'm going to go back to our thought for today was, what is one realization that changed my parenting forever? So any final thoughts before we close here for today?
I would say it's realizing I need to grow as much as they need to grow.
Yeah,
It's not me just leading them through it. I need to grow as much as they need to grow. Then we will both become better and more of what we are able to be.
Yeah. And I think that I would close with, I agree with you totally. And that we have realizations, we have moments in time always that we can kind of look back and go, oh, that was a seminal moment. That was something that changed. But I would say that my experience now with two grown kids is look for those moments.
Yes.
I can go back to that particular moment in time now in hindsight. But if I was more mindful as in my parenting, as I'm going along the way, maybe I would have figured out some of these things earlier. Who knows? I think just for us to be aware that we're always in growth mode, as are our kids, and we are the ones that have to be doing the work too. And be curious about our own work and notice when something happens, like your awareness of just watching your daughter crumble in front of your expectations of her. Those are important things for us to take the time to kind of go, what did I just do? And how can I change? So thank you. And we want to, again, encourage our wonderful parents to put comments in on YouTube or Facebook for us, ask questions, bring other ideas to our conversations, and wish you all a wonderful week ahead with your children.
Thank you. Make every moment matter. Have an awesome week.